welcome to the City Club Forum. I'm Jim Lipscomb, president of the City Club. The title of our forum today, 21st Century Models for Sex, Marriage, and the Family, may seem avant-garde, and perhaps it is. But with the rapid and in some respects startling societal changes we have experienced in the United States in the past 25 years, we clearly need a better understanding of what has happened and what lies ahead for the most basic of our human relationships, the family. Few people have written for a larger audience so many successful books related to this subject than our speaker today, Mr. Robert Remmer. A graduate of Bates College and the Harvard Business School, Mr. Remmer was president of a large commercial printing firm in Boston for 30 years, while at the same time writing 10 novels and 4 nonfiction books, all of which are still in print. His best-known book is The Harrad Experiment, which has sold more than 3 million copies in the United States alone and continues to sell 100,000 a year. All of his novels deal with alternate lifestyles and structured forms of marriage, including The Rebellion of Yale Merit, Proposition 31, Thursday, My Love, and Come Live My Life, all of which have sold more than 1 million copies. As he wrote in accepting our invitation, I'm sure my ideas will startle your audience, but the important thing is they will start them thinking. Mr. Remmer, we are pleased to have you with us today.
It's nice to be here, and particularly because I really get a chance to talk to my own peer group. I've spoken at a great many colleges throughout the country, and it's always younger people. And there's just one thing that I want you to know is that in addition to speaking, the subject that I'm going to speak on is going to shock you, I'm sure, in some points. And the way I'm going at it will shock you. But I also could speak on economics. In fact, wrote a novel which I hoped would be published under the title Looking Backward 2. And my publisher, that was a famous utopian novel, Looking Backward. And I recommend that if you have a chance to read it. It was written by Edward Bellamy. Anyway, my hero in Looking Backward 2 believed he was a reincarnation of Edward Bellamy, and he's running for President of the United States in 1996, and he's trying to turn the United States into a people's corporation. And transfer payments under a people's corporation come the other way. It would come from the corporation, which is the total of all of us, back. So anyway, the book has a total economic philosophy in it, which shocked my publishers, and I had to write 3 more sex scenes before I could get the book published. And if you pick up a copy of Love Me Tomorrow, you'll find somewhere in about midsection there's a footnote that if you want to go on with the story, skip the next 40 pages because, as usual, Bob Rimmer is ranting on some subject. So I have used the novel in this particular way. I don't usually read a speech, and I'll try to make this one so it doesn't sound as if I'm reading it, but I'm trying to stay within the time limit here, and I have a tendency to ramble if I don't do that. Some people think I'm a utopianist. Others think I'm a futurist. The truth is that all the various alternate premarital and postmarital sexual and family styles that I have proposed within the framework of the various novels are achievable utopias. I dedicated my 3rd novel, The Harrad Experiment, to the men and women of the 21st century who might consider it quaint, but hopefully would consider it germinal, since it pointed the way to a new kind of post-secondary education for all Americans. But the truth is there is no Harrad-style post-secondary education yet, or anything like it, offered by any college or university in this country or the world. In the 40th edition of the Harrad Experiment, which was published in '79, I added along afterward, Who's Going to Start Harrad?, which is just as shocking to college administrators and faculty and many parents and religious leaders as it was 15 years ago when the Harrad Experiment was first published. Harrad is not a college. You couldn't get a degree from Harrad. Rather, it's a 4-year living environment which any college or university could offer to undergraduates who would agree over a 4-year period, or as I have further developed the theory in my novel, The Premar Experiments, a 2-year period, to room together on campus with 4 members of the other sex and 1 of the other race. None of these roommates would be of their own choosing, nor would there be any marriage commitment between the male and female roommates. In other words, if you could experience this kind of undergraduate living, you would be rooming in a one-to-one friendship relationship with a member of the other sex whom you did not choose as your roommate. Like any 2 roommates of the same sex in a typical college or university environment, you would pursue your studies, leading to a degree or vocational training in the colleges and universities and vocational schools in the area. In addition, all roommates would be required to take a human values seminar, which would convene once a week during the entire 4 years for a couple of hours and would help unify the entire undergraduate learning experience and give young men and women much broader perspectives on their own historical place in the world, as well as gradually help them become joyously skilled and loving in the area of human sexuality and interpersonal relationships. If you completed the entire 4 years of this Harrad pre-mile living experience, whether you married one of the roommates you lived with in this educational program or not, you would have experienced 4 members of the other sex on an intimate marital basis and in all probability enjoyed sex making with each one of them on a one-to-one basis. If you have read any of my 7 alternate lifestyle novels, you already know that I believe that human beings function better within socially approved structures, and that I believe if we dared to legalize other forms of marriage relationships beyond monogamy on an a priori basis, we could eventually create sounder family structures and a sounder social system than one in which monogamy is the only form of marital relationships. Thus, I believe that we should legalize bigamous marriage, marriages of up to 2 men and 1 woman and 2 women and 1 man. I also believe that we should legalize 2-couple or up to 3-couple marriages so that the husbands and wives, along with their children, could become family corporations, and the couples involved in these corporate-style marriages could pool their economic and sexual lives in varying degrees. I think we also need a form of synergamous or succedaneum marriages which would give some kind of structure and create a socially approved but not legally based friendship relationships in what we now refer to as open marriages. None of these alternate marriage styles would supplant or replace monogamy, and in most cases the original pair bondings would continue, but the original marriage partners would not necessarily be monogamous. Before I give you a platform and a manifesto, which I'm going to come to, for a new moral minority, which I believe could lay the groundwork for a new era in interpersonal and sexual relationships and make possible new kinds of premarital and postmarital alternatives that I have proposed, let me give you a fast overview of the sexually frustrated society we have drifted into in the past 50 years. We now live in a society where many people believe that sex for recreation, sex for stimulation, and sexual variety, with as little human and interpersonal involvement as possible, can be a way of life for millions. We live in a world where our personal needs for self-determination, combined with our continuous scientific breakthroughs, have totally changed the kind of marriage and family that our mothers and fathers had. No feminists or futurists in the 1960s predicted or even anticipated that by the end of the 1970s, 50% of all American women would be working wives, or that of the 19 million new jobs that have been created in the past decade, 11 million of them would be filled by women. Back in the 1960s, when Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique was a bestseller, Betty and other feminists hailed work and careers as the only way that women could fulfill themselves. Little did they realize that 20 years ago, that most women would be working not because they wanted to, but because they had to supplement their husband's income and to stay equal to inflation. And today, women are working outside the home, not because in most cases they are career women, but because homemaking, being a housewife, is no longer a full-time job. And many women are discovering in their workplaces that there are other men in the world beside the men they married, and that particular husbands might not be so smart or so aggressive as they think they are, and in many cases may not be just as downright attractive as they may think they are, or earn as much money as the man a woman may be meeting on her job. As a result, many women are playing the former men's game. If, as the current statistics reveal, about 65% of married men currently have extramarital affairs, you can count on it. In the coming year, an equal number of women will prove in bed, with their husbands or not, they are equal. Like it or not, the average male is marrying a woman who refuses to be dominated by her husband. Nancy Reagan may exemplify Phyllis Schlafly or Mabel Morgan's total woman. Nancy may be a woman who is a mirror reflection and who adores her husband as much as he adores himself. She may not greet Ronald after a hard day's work in the Oval Office with a cocktail in hand, wearing the latest provocative underwear from Fredericks of Hollywood. But the truth is she's a cultural lag. She's not a typical woman of the 1980s. The reality of many American women today is the 39-year-old woman whose husband has deserted her, skipped alimony payments, and who has to go to work to support her 3 children and mortgage payments on a house that she can't afford to live in. There are 7 million women in America today who have lost the man they counted on, either by divorce, desertion, or death. Most of them have no way to support themselves. Only a few have marketable skills. They are totally lonely in a society that values single women, but only if they're somewhere between 30 and 35 and have no mewling children hanging on their skirts. Hundreds of thousands of these women would be delighted to join in a menage a trois, a bigamous marriage. But while women have managed to control the sexual harassment in their working environment and may slowly achieve equal pay for equal work, they are far from winning the battle of being sex objects. We live in the world of the undulating, provocative teenage behind. The Jordache look, the being naked underneath look, I ain't wearing nothing but my underalls, is the come-on sex tease message. According to Arthur Ross, director of Weiss Gettler, a large advertising agency, people are looking for new stimulants on a subconscious level. Sex is the last taboo. Explicit sex advertising is targeted to reach what the advertising profession perceives as a sex-jaded public, a turned-off populace. If you don't think Arthur Ross is where it's at, turn on your television. Watch the Olay woman promise you new sexual heights with your Olay look. Or listen to the Aviance woman who raves, I can bring home the bacon, fry it in a pan, I can work till 5 o'clock, and if it's loving you want, I can kiss you and give you the shivering fits. Or she may be telling you, I've been sweet, I've been good, I've had a full day of motherhood, but I'm going to have an Aviance night. And then there's the Harvey Bristol cream lady. What kind of sexually strange land are we living in that the men who control the advertising business bomb their sexually frustrated fellow men with a continuous sex tease? Teenage songwriters who actually write their own lyrics are more honest than Madison Avenue copywriters. Do It is the name of one of the current songs. Do that to me one more time. Another is more romantic. Take time, do it right. Compared to our movies, teenage song lyrics are mild. And keep in mind that 76% of the suburban theater audience is now composed of young people between the ages of 12 to 29. They flock to the theaters in droves to see movies like Little Darlings, which features Tatum O'Neal and Christy McNichol, 15-year-olds at summer camp, who are trying to win a bet as to who will get sexually initiated first. Or movies like 10, which is the story of an older man in his 40s searching for his youth with a much cooler younger woman. When he finally gets her to bed, even though she's married, she's so enthusiastic about having sex with him that she scares him right out of her arms. Or try a movie called Changing Seasons, in which Shirley MacLaine is discovered in bed with her lover by her teenage daughter, while Daddy is in another bed in the same house with Bo Derek, that perambulating 10 woman again. That's only a small sample of the sexual confusion, sexual frustration, and sexual guilt that's being portrayed by these movies. And incidentally, if you go to these movies and see them, the morals always come back into a monogamous preferred situation, even though they've covered all the other angles. And it isn't working. If you still read books and you don't think that sex sells novels, or that many authors aren't even more sexually hung up than their readers, and if you aren't aware that women read practically all the novels published, then you better not write books or go in the publishing business. The current biggest selling novels are called Gothic novels, and they sell in the millions of copies. They presumably cater to women's sexual fantasies, which include a kind of happy rape, by which the hero who defiles and savages the heroine, but later repents, marries her, and they live happily ever after. Every month, the Doubleday Club, one of the biggest book clubs, puts an asterisk in their bulletin on at least 20 of their current offerings, which advise the potential purchaser that they contain explicit sexual writings. Gay Talese's book, Thy Neighbor's Wife, a nonfiction story of the happenings at Sandstone, has already earned him in excess of $3 million. Gay does not believe in sexually faithful monogamous marriage. Evidently, his wife, Nan, even though she herself is monogamous, gives him very loose reins. She hasn't divorced him yet, and she appeared with him on the Phil Donahue show to promote his book. Incidentally, Phil Donahue knows where his audience is at, and he regularly offers sexually provocative programs to keep his housewife audience enthralled. Keep in mind that I don't believe in 50-year sexually faithful monogamous marriages either, but I don't believe that Gay's approach, sex as recreation, and without much involvement with the particular sexual partner of the moment, is the answer. When John and Barbara Williamson, who founded Sandstone, asked me to write the Sandstone story before Gay Talese did the job, I told them that I believe we must create a society where the process of sexual getting is very much involved with the process of sexual and mental giving. We've got to get rid of the insanity of the Fritz Perls' I gotta be me philosophy. It will be a much more joyous and sexual world when we discover in our own sexual and interpersonal relationships, I've got to be you. The underlying message in all of these films, and most of the novels that top the bestseller list, is sexual inhibition, sexual frustration, and a never-ending male-female adversary relationship, all played off against the left-hand social agreement that monogamy, even when it becomes tandem polygamy, which is our present divorce and remarriage structure, is the only possible solution. The truth is that we live in a totally male-frustrated sexual society that offers no loving, caring way for millions of men to express themselves with women as total sexual creatures throughout their lifetime. I'm not going into all the detail because I want to get into this proposals for a new moral minority, so I'll skip ahead here. But I do want to give you some feel of where the culture is. If you take at the premarital level, my feeling is that young people in colleges today are no better off, even though they seem to have a much wider ability to experience sexual partners or other people on an interpersonal basis, but they are not, the environment has not improved. Our premarital sexual frustration, interpersonal confusion grows worse after marriage. According to Robert McGinley, who publishes a newsletter devoted to the subject, there are more than 100 swing clubs operating in the United States. McGinley estimates that up to 5 million people are involved in swinging or social sex. If you're not into swinging, and if you're an old-time patriarchal male who doesn't want to share sexual delights with your spouse, you can find the phone numbers or box numbers of thousands of young women in newspapers published throughout the country like Screw or the Boston Phoenix. These women offer their services by appointment on a one-to-one basis. Or you can find the addresses of massage parlors. Time magazine describes in their May 14, 1981 issue a new phenomenon. It's called stomping and womping, a new kind of emporium where you can get mental relief from your sadomasochistic leanings. Or if you're a conservative, there are more than 5,000 sex therapists in the United States, many of whom do not have university credentials, where you will be taught how to be comfortable with your sex feelings, how to avoid premature ejaculation, how to have an orgasm, even how to masturbate. Some of these therapists provide sex surrogates, women who will teach you how to become potent again. In a recent study made by the New York Times, it is estimated that Americans are spending at least $5 billion a year on sex-related items. The 10 leading sex magazines, which include Playboy and Penthouse, sell 16 million copies monthly and gross more than $500 million a year. There are 800 adult theaters in the United States showing sex movies. Every week, some 2.5 to 3 million people pay an average price of about $4 to watch explicit sex movies. The gross income in the adult film area is in excess of $500 million and is being supplemented by the rapid growth of videotapes and movies which you can buy outright and rent and play in the privacy of your own home. In a book which I am writing on video sex, and once again I remind you that I do not believe in censorship of sex making between consenting adults, nor do I believe the portrayal of normal sex making should be censored. I predict that before the end of this decade, the sale of what I call sex vids, adult films on tapes and discs, will exceed $1 billion annually. Before 1990, you will be watching your favorite Hollywood stars on videotapes or discs in the privacy of your own home, copulating on your living or bedroom television set. There are 20,000 so-called adult bookstores in the United States. Strip-teasing has come to the suburbs with male strip-tease shows. There are 2 new companies developed on the Tupperware home party style. They don't offer pots or pans. One of them, Underwear Incorporated, offers home parties where women can try on sexy Frederick-style underwear and purchase it so they can better seduce their spouses. Another one, called Just for Play, offers sex aids. If you think moral majority or organized religion has the answers or that we can go back to some kind of Victorian era when human sexuality was repressed and frustrated, but was even more rampant as a result of repression, forget it. The only way to create a healthy sexual society is to stop being ashamed of human sexuality, stop frustrating healthy young human beings, and offer them from early childhood a loving, caring, sexual environment where older citizens dare to exalt human sexuality, wonder at it, and make the act of sex-making both joyous and filled with warm laughter and amazement at the wonder of one human being being able to surrender him or herself to another. Let them grow up in a society where we have incorporated the lovely mystery of human sexuality and procreativity and loving one another into our religions. Let them grow up in a society where human sex making is a sacrament. I'm not going to go cover all the things of the statistics that you know on the divorce rates or the 18 million children who are now living in separated homes because of that, or the fact that single parents, children from single-parent homes consistently have lower academic achievement and are really a problem, or the fact that in moral majority may be lamenting that more than a half of the 10.3 million 15 to 19-year-old girls in this country are now engaging in premarital sex, and 1 million of them are getting pregnant. You may be dead set against sex education in the schools that would really teach young women how not to get pregnant. At the same time, you may be a pro-lifer who insists that 600,000 babies that were aborted last year should have been born no matter what traumatic circumstances of their lives or their parents' lives might be. I'm keep moving on this because I'm going to get to the platform now, and I want to get this, a few minutes of it, to instead of offering young people a sex-positive world, we have created a sex-negative environment. We set the stage for future marital problems by degrading human sexuality, making it evil, confining it to the sleazy areas of our cities, at the same time brassly using it as a sex tease in our advertising. My feeling is that instead of sex-negative approaches, we need a new moral minority, a few million of us who are in basic agreement and someday will become a sexual and moral majority. We need a new moral minority who dare to propose new approaches to human sexuality that would put America in the vanguard of all nations. We need a new moral minority who are aware that even though our scientists are making the most exciting technological and biological breakthroughs in the history of human beings, we are still living in the midst of the greatest interpersonal confusion and sexual sorrows that men and women have ever experienced. The first sex-positive credo of a new moral minority would be to make human nudity commonplace. Basically, this means that men and women could be naked whenever it was personally convenient for them to be naked, and at the very least being naked in one's home or backyard, front yard, in public and apartment, hotel swimming pools, or in YMCA or YWCAs. Obviously, this would eliminate much of the silly, sexual lasciviousness from men's magazines, and gradually, in the framework of a new moral minority's total approach to human sexuality, would gradually restore a sense of wonder and dignity to the human body in all of its manifestations. Simultaneously, a new moral minority should approve the visual portrayal of normal human sexuality between consenting adults over the age of 18 in magazines, newspapers, television, and in the movies. Normal human sexuality should include penile vaginal sex and oral sex. This would mean that from childhood, young people would have seen many men and women enjoying sex making and men and women kissing each other's bodies in the act of love. A new moral minority would try to give young people a sense of basic human values so they could discern the difference between visual portrayals that exalted human sexuality and visual portrayals that degraded human sexuality. A new moral minority would define deviational sex by current standards of deviational, which would include group sex and anal sex and many other kinky variations, which I won't bother to catalog for you. But they would not try to censor deviational kinky sex between consenting adults. A new moral minority would dare to teach young people that kinky sex between consenting adults rarely involves caring, loving relationships, but tends to treat another human being as an object. A new moral minority would approve the censorship of violence, sexual or otherwise, within the framework of the 20th century. A new moral minority would be aware that we are on the verge of a new video sex revolution via video cassettes and video discs, and they would go all out to eliminate conflicts over sex education in the schools by encouraging parents to use specially created sex tapes and discs and share with their children in the privacy of their own home the joys of sex making and Planned Parenthood. A new moral minority would encourage feminists and all women to take a positive approach to human sexuality and create stories and dramas for television and videotapes and discs which are just as sexually explicit as any of the 1,000 or more porno films that are now available on tapes. But instead of casual, non-committed sex, they would romanticize, exalt, and offer new, healthy, fun-loving, caring approaches to human sexuality. A new moral minority would go all out to legalize a new kind of state and federal controlled prostitution, which would make sexual companionship homes widely available throughout the country. Such homes would be run by accredited sexologists. They would offer the sexual services of both men and women by appointment within a pleasant home-style environment. None of the millions and millions of men and women who have no access to normal sexuality would be deprived in a sexually moral society. A new moral minority would encourage the advent of new religions or help reconstitute some of our present religions with a sex-loving God. And these old and new religions would unashamedly exalt human sexuality and fertility, as many of our pagan religions did before they were submerged by Christian Judeo teachings. A new moral minority would encourage the exploration and legalization of new-style families and working environments which would make daycare more family-oriented and would create new-style economic groups that encompass several generations. And a new moral minority would choose would endorse new style work environments that employed husband and wives as work-sharing teams on different time schedules so that parents or older people were continuously a part of a growing child's home environment. A new moral minority would make Americans conscious that a good sex education could totally minimize abortion. Very few people dare to come out and tell you that abortion is a sad and unfortunate kind of birth control. A new moral minority would teach our children that human loving and caring for another person is not evil, and intimate friendships are really the greatest joy they can experience throughout an entire lifetime. And they would encourage parents to let their teenage sons and daughters enjoy this kind of loving experience in the privacy of their own homes, instead of trying to force human sexuality underground like some of our lawmakers would do, using positive sex education approach. In their early premarital years, we would teach our young people how to enjoy sex without actual sexual intercourse, and that a responsible decision of when to make a life in a truly pro-life society would be made before the act of sex-making started. I have a lot of other planks in this new moral minority platform. One is which is lifelong education, and an education along the Harrad Experiment lines, which would be available, and I have proposed this in detail, and it can be done very readily by the federal government in cooperation with industry, so that every young person gets an additional 4 years of education. But I'm going to stop here because I'm right on the time limit, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Rimmer. Today at the City Club, we're listening to Robert Rimmer, a writer of bestsellers, addressing us on the topic, 21st Century Models for Sex, Marriage, and the Family. In just a moment, we'll turn to our traditional question period, but first, some announcements. Today, we're winding up our annual membership campaign, during which time we have been offering a special membership rate of just $25, which covers the cost of dues until the end of this membership year, next November 30. So far in this campaign, since the 1st of April, we have welcomed 292 new members into the City Club. If you join today or have an application postmarked by Sunday night, you may still join for $25. We hope you'll take advantage of this special offer now and join us here at the City Club, Cleveland's famous Citadel of Free Speech. Our student program is over for this school year. There are no students with us today, but this program, which we sponsor in cooperation with the Cleveland Board of Education and with the support of Sohio, will resume again next fall. Next week, our forum speaker will be the congressman from Ohio's 23rd District, Ronald M. Model. His subject will be wage and price controls, the missing ingredient. Make your reservation early for this important address. Now for our questions for Mr. Rimmer. We have 2 microphones, one in the front with Alan Davis, one in the rear with Bill Evans. Raise your hand to be recognized. First question, please.
Yes, Mr. Rimmer,
Yes.
I'm just curious about your definition of the contrast between a human being and an animal.
I don't think there's any, I don't think animals have any contract whatsoever, but human beings do have a contract.
Contrast.
Oh, contrast. Between our ears, a brain, ability to take another human being and treat that person as a whole, total person. And we're not genetically driven like animals. We can or not have intercourse. We can have certain moral values. The kind of moral values that I'm proposing may shock you, but the immoral values that are in the society shock me. And I know that I'm getting it to you, but in terms of well, give me a little more detail as what you're looking for. I'm aggravating you, obviously.
In one sense, well, I could ask you 100 questions because everything leaps in my mind. The antithesis of everything that I believe in this country or any country. You would have people running through the streets rampant, families living together. It doesn't work. It didn't work in the communes in California. It's not going to work anywhere. It's a blatant. You're obviously trying to sell your books. And
no, I'm not. As a matter of fact,
credit for that, but I would do it in a nicer way.
No, everything that I've written about different families, other than, in other words, we live in a society where we believe in monogamy, but there's a whole Islamic society that believes in polygamy, and it works very well in a polygamous society.
But they do it discreetly. If they do it, there's a difference.
Yes, but it's legal within the system. It's not legal here. And I'm going to tell you something, that the most popular form of relationship in this country, not recognized legally, beyond monogamy, is a three-couple of menage-a-trois relationship, and there are hundreds of thousands of people living this way, and many sociologists have looked upon this as a way of really solving the problems of older people, where the males no longer survive as long as the females in the society. It would be very, very nice if two females could join up and find a willing male in his late 70s or so forth, and many women would be happy to do that. And it's the same problem, if you start to think about it. The kind of society we have has created a totally age-segregated society. We have a society where you live in little small homes, the small homes where you can't really take care of your older people in these homes at all. And then finally, you yourself take the second move. You sell your home, move into an apartment, and find the next phase is the nursing center and then or the senior citizen center and the nursing home. And it's all age segregated. It's age segregated by a housing situation that does that throughout the country, and it was done after World War II when we really created the nuclear family with the GI Bill. And this society, and this is a pluralistic society. All I'm saying is, not that everyone should be involved in many different kinds of, maybe no one here would entertain the idea of joining a corporate marriage of two couples who pool their resources and pool their economics. And I didn't write this for a sex tease. If you read Proposition 31, you get a novel with a bibliography and the whole works. And this is true of every novel I've written. In fact, my publishers detest me because I'm one of the few writers who uses the novel simply as a method of putting across ideas that if I wrote them otherwise would end up in abstruse sociological journals and wouldn't be read by anybody. So my publisher, actually, the president of the publishing company, told me that I was the last Puritan. And I can tell you that it's New American Library, and you can read some of their novels and find out what they publish. How about somebody else?
Mr. Reamer,
yeah.
I question your definition of love and caring in relationship to children growing up in this free society. Obviously, you are trying to legitimize that our priority, perhaps, in our private life is our freeing of our human sexuality. But where does commitment, where do other values and other ways of looking at the family come into your organization of this new scheme for living, so that children know who they are relating to, who their parents are, or who are the people who are loving, that they can count on in a lifetime?
I don't say that what I'm saying is right, but I'm saying you're living in a society where there were, last year, or 79 statistics, where there were 2,950,000 marriages and 1,350,000 divorces. And if you're getting married tomorrow, you have a 50% chance of being divorced. And you also have a 50% chance that if you have children in this kind of society, these kids are going to be brought up in a separated kind of environment, which I don't think can give them the loving that two committed couples might join together in a relationship. Now, let's take it premaritally in the sense of premarital sex today. We have a really weird situation in premarital sex. Everyone says, okay, premarital sex is all right, but we don't create the environments for premarital sex. If we have young people, we really should make it comfortable for them. And if we believe in, and I certainly believe in premarital sex, I don't know about yourself, but I believe in premarital sex, but I don't believe in it in a sinful relationship. And I don't think any sexual relationship between caring people is a sinful relationship. So that if we had the right kind of, and I don't say, when I'm saying a new moral minority, obviously it's a minority. But if a minority of parents decided to say to their children, here, you have a room in your house, and you've got a 14 or 15-year-old girl or boy, and you don't have to go out and have sex behind the barn or wherever you may have it, in automobiles or motels or whatever. You bring your friend home here, and this room is your room in your house. And now at the same time, you teach these young people how to have sex. You give them information on their sexuality that you finally make sex at, say, the age of 17, actual sexual intercourse, a rite of passage. But before that, it's verboten. But you also teach young people how to love each other and care for each other without having penile vaginal sex. And you can do that. Now you've got according to the statistics, about 75% of 16-year-old, 15, 16-year-old kids today are having sexual relationships, and 1 million of them are getting pregnant. And half of them are keeping their kids, which is, you know, it brings out a whole crazy society. So what I'm saying may not apply to you, but I'm saying if we create a society or lay the groundwork for a society that has some saner elements in regard to our sexuality, I think we'll have a healthier one. I don't think we can censor it out of existence, and I happen to be at the moment writing a book on video sex, and believe me, when I said that video sex is going to penetrate this country, you will be amazed at what's going on right now in this field. Yes?
There's so many questions, but the first one that came to my mind when you talked about two couples living together was, how do they fill out their 1040 form?
I hope you're a lawyer, because actually in the novel Proposition 31, where I propose this form of marriage, and I'll come right around to it, I proposed, Proposition 31 became the title of the novel. I wrote it under the title The Commitment, but the publishers decided it was a catch-22, but it isn't. However, Proposition 31 proposes that two-couple or up to three-couple marriage is a legal form of corporation that two couples can venture into with their children, so they're all equal shareholders. And I described in detail how this would be accomplished, and with the help of California lawyers, it's written in the book as a legal proposition to go on the ballot. It's never been on the ballot in California. As obviously, this kinds of marriages would require all kinds of legal restructuring of some of our monogamous inheritances and so forth.
Yes, and that would be very far in the future, I would imagine, because currently it's very difficult to have a group home where, let's say, someone who is not of the immediate family is allowed to inhabit that.
That's another reason. Zoning laws prevent it.
Yeah, it'll take about 50 or 60 years to do that. So I see
No, why would it? Why would it? If a state legalized a certain form, for instance, California never tried to get it on the ballot, but a representative in the state of Wisconsin tried for about 5 years to put a Proposition 31 style marriage on the ballot in Wisconsin.
Well, I say that because it takes that long to change zoning laws in other respects. But have you ever been accused of having these outlandish schemes that really could be applicable only to upper income people who could move into rural retreats where they wouldn't have to be bothered with income tax and zoning laws?
No, not well. I have been accused of always writing rich people into my novels, and they are all in. But I tried to counteract that by writing a novel called The Harrad Experiments, which proposed that the Harrad idea would now be available to every youngster in this country, and could be. In other words, you want to solve the employment problem, you got two ways: take the youngsters into a draft, or take them into an advanced educational system. And it's a very sad thing in this country what we are doing with education, which is the absolute future of the country. And this is one of the planks that I would put in a new moral minority platform, is that it becomes one of the central purposes of this country to put education as the first priority, and more education than the average youngster is getting today. You know, the 50% of the kids in this country end up on the job market when they finish high school. 50%. The other 50% get some college education or vocational education. They have very little premarital experience relatively, and you can, the statistics on that I won't go into, but if we did this with our youngsters and we took them out of the mainstream and yet tied them in a 13-week work-study program, which is the way I put Prima together, you would now give a young person a socially, he would earn his own education. Each person would be able to earn their own education in this society for another 4 years on any subject or any vocation or anything they wanted to do. And I think this country would be far ahead. In the process, I propose along with it that some of it would offer the additional option of a Harrad Prima sex education program, but optional. What I'm saying again is, and if you're a pluralist and you believe in this country, then let's bring in a pluralism in terms of our interpersonal and social things and legalize these things and not try to stamp them out of existence. We're never going to stamp the sexual immorality that's occurring in this country out of existence. I say let's exalt human sexuality. Let's create a feeling about humans that's totally different. Yes.
Mr. Rimmer, it's difficult to frame a question for you. It'd be delightful to have a discussion with you.
I'm sorry.
I perceive, my perception of you is as an evangelist and an idealist, and I mean that very sincerely. For the possibly 2 or 3 of us who might be attracted to your moral minority, how do we join your church?
I'm sorry. There is no place where you can send money like you can to Jerry Falwell. And all I'm saying is, as a matter of fact, this is the first time I have tested this idea of a new moral minority to this Cleveland group. And what I intend to do with it is to throw the basis of this lecture over to the American Humanist Association and the American Humanists. If you're familiar with humanists, they're not a very big group in this country, maybe 25,000 people who are humanists. Humanists say man is God. That's where they're at. And so they're able to approach this kind of thing on that basis. So I'm going to suggest that they are the logical people to form a new moral minority.
Sir, what is your personal philosophy or belief as to the meaning of the journey?
I don't know what you mean by the journey.
I mean the meaning of why we're here on this earth and what our purpose is.
To love one another. To love one another and really love one another.
I think that's the meaning of the journey.
Yes. I think the meaning, if there is a meaning, and I don't think that any one of us can ever decipher or discern what that meaning is, but I think that if we could put into our children the absolute amazement and wonder of each human being, that this is the way to find whatever God may be. I don't believe in a personal God, but I do believe in the absolute amazement that I'm standing here and you're sitting there, and we're talking to each other and we're trying to communicate, or we're listening to each other, and all of the processes are going on in our body that most of us don't even know what they are or what's happening. And like there was an article I just read on memory. No one knows what memory is in the human brain, why it's there, how it... Now, is God responsible for that? I don't know, but I do know that I am totally fascinated with the learning processes that are going on and the learning that's... And I think every human being, this becomes a way of making life worthwhile. In other words, if you're like me, you walk into a bookstore and you look at the millions of things you don't know and you want to buy all the books and you know you can't read them all. And you know that you can't learn everything. That's my journey. I think each person has their own, perhaps. Yes.
Okay. I would like to know how you would propose to institute this form of society, because it seems as though we would have to take the children that were born from today onward and isolate them for the purpose of education so that they would not be contaminated by our present-day obscene and corrupt views of sex.
No, let me tell you, I don't think so, because if you wanted to start, and I'm looking for I don't want to do it, because the minute that I do it, I become a charlatan who's trying to get rich starting a Harrad college or a Harrad Prima. And I've had many people say to me, why don't I start? All that has to be done is within the framework of a city like Cleveland to set up a living program along the Harrad lines and work it out with the accredited colleges and schools in this area so that the students going there could take their courses and graduate. Now, then, instead of living in the dormitories in this environment, they would have this as an optional way of... So I would predict that, and the reason that I don't do it is that my credentials are wrong. I have a master's in business administration, and when I move into the areas of PhDs, they say, just like you, where you're coming from, and you're crazy because you don't know anything about education. But I'm sure they would have no difficulty in setting up experiments in this kind of program. I also, in other words, you're not going to do this overnight. It's a slow process. You experiment. And we live in an age where experiments are valid. We've made all kinds of with human beings. Look at Masters and Johnson, and we read all their material that they did with human beings telling us about our sexuality. We can do the same thing with families. And I propose to the American Council of Life Insurance Executives, who are more horrified than most of you when I proposed it to them, because they're all presidents of life insurance companies, that they should set up a Future Families of America Foundation. Otherwise, is the way it was going, I wouldn't, if I thought I had a 50% chance of being divorced, why do I want to buy ordinary life insurance? You know, in other words, the life insurance company have a vested interest in the style of living that we will be down the road 20 years. So these experiments now become, there's an experiment here, one there, so forth, and they're purposely done low profile so that the newspapers and the media are not driving the people involved in them crazy. There's just no general publicity until after they've gone on for a little while, and maybe, you know, a premarital program 4 years or a family program 4 years, and then someone has now able to evaluate it. Maybe it won't work. Maybe all the ideas I'm saying are crazy. But I think what we're doing is crazy in that we're drifting.
Mr. Roma,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by your presentation. However, I look back and think, why today crime increases tenfold, rape increases? This wasn't happened 20 years or 30 years ago. People had more morals than we have now. And all our morals deteriorate rapidly.
Well, I'll tell you why, is because we've had in other words, when I was a young man in college, the population of the United States was 120 million people. We now have 220 million and maybe more. And we have a great immigrant population coming into this country, and we can't even count them in the South in terms of the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans and the rest coming in. And as a result of this, at the same time in this country, there are 65 million unchurched Americans, Americans who have no relationship to any church at all. In other words, they don't go to church, and whether they believe in God, maybe they do, maybe they don't. So if you go back 20 or 30 years, you would find, in all probability, a very much different percentage. We have undermined many aspects of this society. And on an economic basis, we've undermined the sound money. We have no sound money in this country, and that alone will make an immoral society eventually. And there's a lot of things that have been occurring. And I don't think that that we can go back under legislation and try and recreate the old style family. We've got to think in terms of the future and new ways. And that's all I'm saying to you. I don't want you to agree with me. I put bibliographies in all my books by many authors who don't agree with me. If I can get you to read, that's a great idea, though.
Mr. Rimmer, a congratulation and a question. The congratulation is you have managed to elicit the broadest question that I've ever heard in my days of coming to the City Club Forum, and that is, what is the meaning of it all? So you are accomplishing your purpose of making us think. The question is, do you not think that you are underemphasizing the point which my neighbor brought up, which is that there is a great need of a child to have a stable relationship with its caregivers, its parents, hopefully, and that should, whatever relationships you may want to try to imagine in a more freewheeling way among adults or even among people coming into adulthood, that you should, if you're really trying to postulate a moral minority manifesto, focus very clearly on what stable relationship you hope to see realized between a new child and its parents.
I have done that within the framework of these novels, and if you want to carry the Harrad idea out one step further, and now I'll give it to you in a utopian basis, if you went to Harrad, you would have a premarital experience with four people or more, but at least 4 of the other sex. And then you would enter in all probability, to a monogamous relationship for another 8 to 10 years. And at this point would be a childbearing era. At this point, the children would be brought up in basically a monogamous relationship, but there would be the open-ended fact that after the age of 31, which is the reason for the title of this novel, the option would be available to you to join into a two-couple relationship, which is really, in other words, this would take a long, intimate courtship and a friendship between two couples, and there are an awful lot of two couples in this country who are right on the edges of this. They won't do it because because it is not socially permissive, and it's a great shock if you find two of your neighbors are closer than they should be. But let's get back to the children now. The children at this point are let's say that we've resolved the problem of whose child is whose, because at this point you're either past your childbearing age or you're going to be very careful if you want to maintain that. I'm not trying to run old-style hippie communes where no one knows the father or the mother. But what I'm saying for the child growing up in a two-couple relationship is that he will have a much better growth if he experiences two peer models or two role models. He sees two fathers, he sees two mothers. Many kids grow up in a society in a monogamous marriage, and all they do is get one role model, their father or their mother. And in many cases, it's a dominating father or a dominating mother. And they don't realize that there are all other kinds of people in the world. And one of the most beautiful adjustments that two couples can make to each other who really care and want to produce this kind of a family, and incidentally, they could afford these much larger homes since they would have the incomes coming in, is that the men would really learn about themselves in relating to another human being. I've covered all this in books, but I think for the growing child, the experience of intimate relationships with more than one father, in the sense he knows his biologic father or mother, but the relationship of seeing another male, another input into this little environment. One of the things that scares the hell out of me, and someone said I don't answer the questions but go on raving, but I want to give as much ideas out to you, is that we are presumably in the electronic revolution with this video, and our homes are going to be totally video equipped. And all we're going to do is produce more alienation of two people sitting in a home looking at a huge television screen with cassettes and cable television and satellite television, and really no better exchange in terms of people want community. They like community. They want to withdraw from it, but they like it.
I got the impression from your opening remarks that most of your speeches are before students and not so often before your peer group.
That's right.
Why do you tend to concentrate on the immature?
It's unfortunate that my peer group are so shocked by me they don't invite me to I guess. I'm here speaking at a Unitarian church on Sunday, and I happen to be a Unitarian in Quincy. And the Unitarian church that I'm a member of is called the Church of the Presidents. Both Adams are buried there. And the minister has never invited me to speak on these subjects in the church because they're all very conservative. In fact, it's a Unitarian church, but there's still a cross over the altar, so it isn't. Anyway, it's more fun. I really like to. The one other time that I did it and had a lot of fun was with that American Council of Life Insurance Executives. It was scary.
Mr. Rimmerd, it is really interesting to me, excuse me, what I would think would be contributory to this sex revolution that we've been going through is the fact that you can see so much trash on television.
Right.
You can see so much, what you're talking about literally turns people on, the sexy negligees, the underwear, etc. If we allow this, and we continue to see it on television, don't you think that is exactly what's going on in the drug revolution as well? Is that if we're going to give everybody everything they want, that's going to just go into every facet of society. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, the sex tease is I think it's sick, sex tease. I think that if we created a society where we really brought young people up with the total mystery and God-given joy of their sexuality and the fact that one of their prime purposes in this life is they're here largely to procreate, but now we're in a society where you can't procreate all the time. In other words, it becomes a privilege to have children in the future in all probability. But this is all part of our drives, part of our thing, and we don't teach kids this way. We put sex on a tease basis, on a sleazy basis. One of the things that sickens me in Boston is a place we have called a combat zone. And when I was a kid, I grew up with the old Howard Theater. And if I wanted to see a naked woman, just like any other young man growing up, he is. If a male doesn't want to see a naked woman, the world stops, right? But why have to see them in a burlesque theater or in a sleazy place between baggy pants comedians who are telling dirty jokes, or in slummy places like, and I'm sure there's such places exist in Cleveland. And I say that we can take sex and make it much more joyous.
One thing you didn't mention at all is the health end of this. I understand that young girls who have indiscriminate partners when sex are more apt to develop cancer later in life. Isn't this a problem?
Well, you see, I'm not saying indiscriminate partners in the sense that if there is a Harrad-type undergraduate experience, the people guiding this program would be constantly guiding it in terms of the youngsters who are coming in at the age of 17 or 18 years old, so that they not only would. In other words, if there was such an institution, which there isn't, and you went there, you would have a roommate of the other sex, just as if you went to a regular college today, you'd have a roommate of the same sex. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to jump into bed, and that doesn't mean that you're going to have an orgy every time you turn around. It'll be a very gradual experience. In other words, and guiding this all the time would be counselors and so forth, where the youngsters met in groups, and you talked about all aspects of your own sexuality and your own drives and so forth, none of which occurs for young people today. It does not occur. They have to solve their problems after marriage.
You may choose not to answer this if you'd like. To what extent do you practice your philosophies in your own personal life? And if you do, and I assume you do, how does your family and how does this affect your family relationships?
My wife is sitting here in front of me. I've been married 40 years. Okay? Well, I'll answer one other thing. We were in a two-couple relationship for 30 years, and it worked. It was a lot of trauma in it. It was a lot of experience going forth, but it worked. And I know of others where it's worked. And it is not easy to find another couple, and I don't think you're going to find. I'll always say you need a long courtship period in it, but it's an interesting experience, a big learning experience.
Thank you, Mr. Rimmer. Today at the City Club, we have been listening to Robert Rimmer, a writer of bestsellers, addressing us on the topic, 21st Century Models for Sex, Marriage, and the Family. We thank all of you for being with us today. The City Club Forum is adjourned.